Welcome back, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of barSILENCE. My name is Jamison, and I'm your host. Every episode of this show aims to explore the very best video game music from past and present. You can listen live on 8beats Radio on the first Tuesday of every month by going to 8beats.co, and this show is also available wherever you get your podcasts at too. So head over to barsilence.com where you can listen to past episodes, see track listings, as well as clicking an easy link to subscribe on whatever your favorite podcatcher is. In this episode, we're going to be listening to the music from the Gran Turismo games released for the original PlayStation and developed by Polyphony Digital. To date, this game series has sold over 88 million units, making it the best-selling video game franchise that's exclusive to the PlayStation. So I think I've expressed this before on the show, but I really love racing games. I do tend to lean more into the arcade-style racing games typically, but I've recently come to love playing simulation racers like Formula 1, Project Cars, and Forza Horizon. With the recent release of Gran Turismo 7, I found myself falling back in love with this game series. And over the last few weeks, it actually inspired me to dig into my collection and start replaying the first two Gran Turismo games again. I know that back when these games were released, that I was more so the type of kid that was playing Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit and Ridge Racer Type 4. Despite those being my preferences, the Gran Turismo games were the first time I had direct exposure to the world of motorsports. The game's focus was more about track times and realistic cars more so than winning races in various locations or drift racing. And not to poke any fun at those games, but there was a real air of seriousness to Gran Turismo that made it stand out. The first game was praised and credited as being one of the best video games ever made, which of course is no small feat. In 1999, for example, Next Generation magazine said it was number 15 in their list of top 50 games of all time. And that was just 2 years after the game came out. And then later, in 2015, 16 years after it was released, IGN called Gran Turismo the second most influential racing game of all time, which really says how important this game was when it came out. So we open today's show with Welcome Back GT from Gran Turismo 2. I really like the sound of the car starting and this mysterious persona of the user deciding to put a CD in that begins the track. In these days of Bluetooth and streaming audio, it kinda makes this more of an audio reenactment of living in the late 90s and early 2000s. But it's a fun and lively track to get you ready to race. Now what I've learned during some research is that the soundtrack for the Eastern and Western versions of Gran Turismo are a bit different than one another. The Eastern version was composed by Masahiro Andoh and Isamu Ohira. And their combination of silky smooth jazz and really rocking guitars made this version completely unique to Japan. Whereas the Western version of the soundtrack goes a completely different route to tailor itself to those audiences by featuring music from bands like Garbage, Manic Street Preachers, Cubinate, and others. The remaining tracks of the Western versions were composed by Jason Page, who worked for Sony Computer Entertainment Europe, and from what I can find online, he's also known for composing the music for most of the official PlayStation Magazine's demo discs starting in 1996. So for this first block of songs, we're going to listen to the Japanese version's jazz fusion inspired tracks called City, followed by Mitsubishi Garage that were both composed by Ohira. And then after that, we're going to listen to the electronica-esque and dancier sounds of the Western version's music by Jason Page. First we'll hear Qualify Results, followed by Car Shop, Honda and Acura. Enjoy. The Gran Turismo series was created by Kazunori Yamauchi, who got his start making games with the 1994 release of Motor Tune Grand Prix for the PlayStation. His goal for the game was to make sure that the car's suspension and handling reflected that of a real car, for a cartoon racing game akin to Mario Kart. It's his crazy attention to detail and dedication to racing accuracy that set the foundation for what would eventually go on to lead the industry in terms of realistic driving simulations. Yamauchi has also become an important figure in the auto industry as well. His work with Polyphony Digital has led to real-world design implementation of multifunction displays with Nissan. His work with the company is found in the Nissan GTR, which is a beautiful high-performance sports car that's become the successor to the famed Nissan Skyline GTR, a car that was made popular by the Fast and Furious films, Initial D, and the Need for Speed games. My favorite fact that I've learned recently is that he actually has a racing career too. He's taken part in 7 different racing events between 2009 and 2016. And he also won the 2011 and 2012 versions of the 24 Hours of Nürburgring in that Nissan GTR. To say the least, this guy lives and breathes racing. Now, to get back to the music, this next block of songs are rocking tracks that really lead into the energy of this game, composed by Masahiro Andoh. If you haven't heard of him yet, that's okay. I knew his work, but I never actually really knew who he was. Andoh is known for being the founding guitarist and main composer of T-Square. They're an incredible Japanese jazz fusion band formed in 1976. If you haven't heard their music yet, I highly encourage you to check it out. Andoh is also known for making music for 6 different Arc the Lag games, as well as being one of the performers in the song Truth, which was Fuji Television's Formula One coverage theme song for 20 years. First up, we're going to hear the song Moon Over the Castle, which was not originally created for the game, but actually came out on his album called Andes in 1996. Since then, it's become the main anthem of the series. It starts off with an orchestral slow-paced introduction, but then slams the pedal to the metal to create this sensation of being behind the driver's seat of all these impressive cars in the game. So I'm going to play the version of the song that comes from the album. It's only mildly different, but it's slightly more amazing because it has just a touch more metal. And then after that, we're going to continue with the song Get Closer that keeps that rocking and racing momentum going with his masterful guitar work. So enjoy these tracks, and I'll be back after that to talk about Gran Turismo 2. In 1999, Polyphony Digital released the highly anticipated sequel, Gran Turismo 2. This release expanded the number of cars 3 times over. It had new tracks and new racing modes. These racing modes were split into 2 discs, one of which was dedicated to the simulation mode and the other for the arcade mode. At the time, games on the PlayStation were really pushing the system to its limits and were in the process of outgrowing the storage capacity limits of CDs individually. Those CDs had a limit of 650 to 700 megabytes of space per disc. So, for perspective, the release of Gran Turismo 7 on PlayStation 5 weighs in at 96.8 gigabytes. The act of splitting Gran Turismo 2 over 2 discs was a signal to gamers that Sony went big with this sequel. All of the hype at the time in the gaming magazines was tangible. It led to Gran Turismo 2 being able to outsell The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time in the UK its first weekend. But somehow, in the 1999 DICE Awards, they surprisingly didn't choose Gran Turismo 2 as the console racing game of the year. Despite all the accolades and glowing reviews, they ended up actually selecting Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. Like the last game, there are some noticeable differences between the 3 versions of the games that were released in the Japanese, North American, and PAL regions. The menu music this time is similar across all 3 versions, but the racing music on the other hand is completely different. The Western versions once again decided to feature music from famous composers like The Crystal Method, Rob Zombie, Stone Temple Pilots, and Garbage, as well as a few others. And then the PAL version included music from more electronic artists like Fatboy Slim, Manson, and the Propellerheads. Then of course the Japanese version kept pace with the original and brought back Isamu Ohira and Masahiro Andoh for a second take on their unique blend of the music for the sequel. Ohira's additions to the soundtrack were largely arrangements of some of his tracks from the first game, but this time they're directly injected with a notable creative passion, making these extremely fun songs to listen to. Underneath us now is a song called Soul of Garage, and then we're going to follow it with Poker Face, Drift of Air version 2, and then finish the block with From the East. Enjoy. Now, for the other part of the soundtrack in the Eastern version, it goes right back into the excitement and energy that can only be replicated by the shredding guitars and brilliant percussion of the music composed by Masahiro Andoh. We'll start things off by listening to the track Blade, which has the most unique sound of all of his entries in this soundtrack. After that, we'll hear the fast-paced rocking track named Call of the Wild. Then the last song in this block is going to be the absolutely thrilling Hot Tin Root, which has a brilliant drum solo and keyboards paired with Andoh's signature, creative, and effortless sounding guitar. And then we'll be back after that. And that's the show. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode of barSILENCE about the music from the first 2 games in the Gran Turismo series for the original PlayStation. If you want to interact with the show and tell me what you think about my selections, you can follow me on Twitter at barSILENCEVGM. That's where I post show updates and various information about the games that are featured in every episode. I do also hope that you guys have been enjoying the show these last few months. And if you have, please share it with your friends and family who might enjoy it too. Then of course be sure to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, because I'd love to hear what you think. And don't forget, you can go to barSILENCE.com to listen to past episodes if you've missed any. And of course, if you're feeling giving, you can always support barSILENCE on Patreon. So to play us out, I've got one more final track for us. It's called The Real Motorious City by Isamu Ohira from Gran Turismo 2. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you guys all next time.